I have known uh, Johnny Wurs for about 17 years, and I have never ceased to be amazed at his talent. He's genuinely a funny, funny man, and he has his own television show syndicated around the country. And on April 6th, he will be up at the Sahara Tahoe. Would you welcome, please, Jonathan Way TR? Hello, John. Oh gosh, pretty thrilling, huh? Well, it is. I wore my new sweater. New for me, was in a fire sale and I grabbed it up. I'm not proud. A lot of my things are used. The shoe where I bought those in the same sale. Not ashamed of that, not. It was a fire sale. And that's about all there is to that. I gotta tell them what you did to me. You may not even remember this. Remember when Jack Parr was doing the old CBS morning show, right? I think that's the first time you were really ever appeared on television, about 1955-56. And we did it out of Grand Central Station. And we did two shows, one at 7 a.m., which played in the East, and then at 8 a.m. the Midwest and West would join the network. And then you had to go back and repeat the first hour of the show live for the West Coast again. And I met you the first time then, and I was back there filling in for Robert Q. Lewis on a daytime show, and you called me at a hotel once. You won't remember this at all. There are a lot of things, but I remember you. I know there are many things you have done. Remember a little dim, my mind has failed me a number of times, but on this particular thing, I was staying at a little cheap hotel back there. Real cheap hotel, right? And I got this call one day, and it was from you, although I didn't know it at the time. And I was just finishing up the show. I said, Johnny Carson. I said, yes. He say, Mr. Welton, I'm with J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency in here in New York. My ears, just the whole scalp went up. And he says, we are doing some commercials for the Buick Company. I remember it so well. And he says, we'd like you to be our spokesman. And of course, there's $2,000 and a new Buick. And right then, a dollar would have been, didn't have any money. And I knew that you knew that I had to go back to California. I had to come back and do a show I was doing, and I wouldn't be there. So I started to do, little disclaimers like I'd love to do it, Mr. Weldon. And then you start to get nasty just a little bit. Well, if what me, you can't do it, that's trouble with you California guys. You come into town, give you a job, you don't want to stay, and then you got really angry and I'm practically dying, and I could killed you at that time. And then he said that's Johnny Wainers, and I could see the Buick just flying away, and I'd already spent the $2,000 on the house, driving the car. You did little cutie things, didn't well. I still call guys up, and I still answer the phone as different people. I love to do that. One of my favorite stories. I love to maybe, be an old person and someone will say, hello, is Jonathan W. is AR. No, the boy is in the basement. He, combing the kitty, say, well, who's this? Well, just an old man who wanders around his house, and a lot of times you get odd reactions from people. But one of my favorite stories was, I've told it before, but it is a fun story. Several years ago, number of years ago, I'd gone back to Ohio to see my mother and stepfather and several relatives, and always it was at Christmas time, and all of us were feeling no pain. My stepmother, my stepfather was certainly in rare form, and my mother had a few, and I'd had several. And drink of your choice, yes, a little touch of the gras, and like many people who and buy-in ranks, you get telephonitis and want to call the world. And so I wanted to call a friend of mine, and his name was Art Lytle, and he and I had gone to school together, and he was a funeral director. And so I called him, and I assumed a character, and I knew that he hadn't seen me or heard my voice in a long time, so I knew I was home free. And I called him up, and he owned still does this day, the Jackson Lyle Funeral Home in Springfield. And so I said, hello, is Mr. Arthur L. Jr. there? And he said, yes, speaking. And I said, is this Arthur L. Jr.? He said, yes. I said, well, this is Elwood P.E. Suggins, and I live out on the Lakewood Beach area, and my brother passed away here Sunday week, and I was wondering if you could do a job on it. And there was a long view, and he said, how long did you say? He'd been dead. I said, well, he passed away here Sunday week. He said, good Lord, man, where have you got him? And I said, well, most our people are from Boise, and I didn't want him to have come that far just to look at grass, So what we did, we put him out there on the porch, set him up again to lattice, and a cold spell set in, just kept him harder in the car. I remember the other day, its sun come out, and he commenced to get fleshy, and his face dropped a little bit. And but I tell you, Mr. Leal, even in death, there's humor. My eldest boy, Lamar Jean, twisted the deceased hand around and put a softball in Well, Lytle lit into me, good heavens, I've never heard anything like this. So, then of course, I broke in. I said, well, it's Johnny Winters, and he said a few things. Those are some of the little things what is the wildest thing you've ever done? The wildest thing, yeah, that you remember. Now, the reason I can say that, because we know each other we have spent some evenings together. Oh, a number of good evenings, when we had been talking to bushes at 300 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I remember right, I guess I'm trying to think the wildest thing I ever did. Well, I remember one story very well. I was sitting, this was back east, I was back in New York. You were talking about an advertising agency, made me think about this. And a telephone rang, and I went to the telephone, and I decided I would become a character, as I just mentioned. And a man said, hello, is Jonathan Winters there? And I said, that little funky man's on a little tractor, and he's out in the backyard cutting some gray. And so he said, who's this? And I said, this is, say, who are you? And he said, well, this is Mr. Cavendish, and I'm with Bon BS or something, and I'd like to talk to Mr. Worse. He said, you mean John? Let me see if I can find Roundo. So, gee, you see this guy at the other end of the phone. So I then my voice. I said, hey, Rond, come on in. It's a phone call for you. Get on it. So I said, hello, this is Jonathan W.S. And then the guy at the other end said, who was that I was talking to? I said, I'm on the phone too. So it's fun to do these little yes, you pet a few people. Here's Ed to tell you about a great new opportunity to try one of the most remarkable vacuum cleaners ever made. We're back. My guests tonight are Joan Rivers, Judy Collins, and Johnny Winers. Your syndicated show has been renewed, I hear, and you're going to do something else on CBS. Yeah, we can mention that. I hope we can, of course, because the network here, they can stand that, I think. I always know there's a little friction, between the three, but what the heck, they're all making a lot of bread. I start doing my little show. It's a half hour, and it will start on CBS here in Los Angeles, 7:30 to 8, around the middle of April. Have the exact date. I hope it'll be around the middle of April. That's what they promised me that. And then I'm going back east to New York on Monday, and it'll be back there. It'll start. It's already in Philadelphia, in your hometown. Big Ed, yes, and I was discharged, in Philadelphia. Very good. Yeah, fellow Marine, right? You corporal, he was a colonel. Yes, that's right. I remember there's an awful lot of difference here. Rarely do you guys mingle with the enlisted guys, right? Hi, kid. Oh, well, you didn't like the service fire. Remember we sat around talking about that several nights. I got along fairly well in the service. I was always disturbed because I didn't know where I was. And unless you're an officer, you see, you're not clued in and you're not given the top papers, which I felt I should have had at least 1 or 2 papers. And I kept asking questions, which is always trouble, running up to a captain, a colonel like yourself, and saying, where are we, sir? Christmas move out. And I was always moving out. I was frightened a great deal of the time. I was frightened to the guys. I didn't understand a lot of them. They didn't understand me. I was kidding all the time. Being grandma one minute, and I had, a lot of guys didn't understand that, would shake up a barracks late at night, turned, I'll never forget, to a full bird colonel, and did a voice on him, which never forget. And I said, oh, sir, what is your name? Little sense of humor, don't do that in the Marines very often. So I was misunderstood a great deal of, but I got out eventually. I knew I would. I had good feelings about that. And I got out. I spent 2.5 years, and then I wandered around aimlessly, looking for odd jobs, and being odd, I found a lot of odd work. We were talking about the first thing people ever remember. Judy remembers at 2 years old, or 3 and 4. Do you remember back that early when you were a kid? The 3 and 4 years back to 1, the one I remember, the beads on the ankle. Oh, remember the blue beads and the nurse putting them on? No, that's pretty far back. No, I remember I'd have to go along with the girls. I remember back about 4. Yeah, about 3 or 4. And I was an only child, as you know. Johnny, I didn't have any brothers or sisters, and that was it. Lonesome it was for a while, and then I realized that any goodies that would be handed over to me. But no, I was an unusual child, you can imagine. Yes, I was frightening old people a lot, scaring them on the porch or something like that. And doing in class, I was a slow student. I was dumb. That's what they used to call slow teachers. Yeah, the teachers would say the boy's slow. But I was, you can imagine, I little girl next to me, somebody like yourself, I go, and the girl would laugh and then point at me and say, Johnny Winter's doing things, Johnny W's doing things, and I'd run out and jump through the window. But no, I was not a very good student. I had very poor concentration, and I was scared to death of the blackboard. There was something about to me, nothing today scares me like when the teacher would say, I remember we had Miss Meter, who was a very unusual woman. Well, I don't want to go into a long story that she was tough and could have made a sergeant easily, and I was frightened of her, and she knew that, and she took advantage of that, I felt, and she would say, John W'ners talk like a man to me a lot. That's unfair, but she sounded sometimes like very, very strong, and she said, go to the board, and I said, yes, Miss B, I'll go to the board, and I was always turning to a student, and because I never knew where I was never prepared, and give me the answer quick, and I'll never forget, there was a guy called Alden Sander. There's Alden Sander. Alden Sander turned to me. He said, we learn by doing. I killed him at reset, but we learn by doing. Learn always one of those guys, and bless his heart, he was a very bright student. He was the brightest guy in our class. I always remember that. He was pages and pages ahead of everybody, and I was pages and pages behind everybody. Many days I remember, it seemed like I was sick a great deal of the time, because I wanted to be, and on warm sunny days I always had a cold. Mother, I shouldn't go, and she'd grab me like this, place me on the bicycle like to school. A lot of times I roller skated. That was fun. Remember roller skating? Sure, yeah. Roller skated, rode the bicycle, walked, ran. Happy childhood though, happy, oh yes, fairly happy, yeah. I was broke a lot of, that's not fun when you're broke all the time. That's right. But I would lay for people in bushes, and what were some of the jobs you did before you got into some of the jobs I did? Yeah, before I started getting into the show business. Oh, some of the jobs I did, I worked in a theater. I was user in a theater. Before I even got out of high school, I was user, and I worked in a place called the U, I think. I'm trying to think of the bar. Well, anyway, I remember it was a circular stage, and I was going around on that thing and doing little funnies. And I got something like $25 for the weekend, and all I could drink and eat. And then I went into the service when I was 17, came out, and then I did a lot of things. One thing I always remember, I was worked for the COCAA, Coca-Cola Bottling Company. I was an inspector, and looking for dead mice and marbles. I sat on a little stool, with the neon light, and did this and just watched bottles all day long. And then I picked apricots, and picked potatoes, shucked corn. You probably did that in Nebraska, shoot. And I worked, I was a Fred cook in the Ohlone Vione Park, oh yeah, in the Ohlone National Park, and worked 9 at night till 5 in the morning, cooking steaks and hamburgers and just little shorter things for the what do they call them? I could never remember the guys. Park attendant yes, yeah, that kept people from the bears and things, but well, I did a lot of cooking. I think most of us have done, odd, weird things, unusual jobs. Have to do something here. What are you doing here now? Well, we're going to sell a little something. Oh, good. And then Dr. Stillman will come out, and Dr. Stillman will come out and help us. P-D-D.